Top tips, come on. Top tips. Setting. I'm about to set up. We're sitting down in a cafe, having a cup of tea, and someone says, "Look, I'm thinking about setting up a website like what you've done. What do I need to do?"
I think my first question would be why. Why are you doing it? What do you want to achieve from it? And that's a really important question to be able to answer. It may be a sort of one-off campaign or something that, some issue that you want to solve in the local community. Might not actually be the best thing to do to start up a whole new site. It might be better to find an existing site or an existing Facebook group or an existing club that's already dealing with that issue and go and join with them and further your campaign that way. But if you were still kind of interested in a sort of more broad approach to a community issue, then setting up hyperlocal could be a way of meeting people, having those conversations, a place to focus attention for people for that issue.
I'd always say to people, don't overreach with the technology at the beginning. If you're starting with the technology because it's a tech project, forget it, because you won't have enough interesting things to say. Keep the technology brutally simple. And that's why Twitter's been so big for hyperlocals, I think, is that it's so easy and quick to just type something out on your phone and broadcast it. It saves you time. I always encourage people to go into things, self-provided platforms like WordPress.com. It has all sorts of limitations. Yes, you can't put widgets in it and so on and so on, but you don't really need those widgets. They're not necessary to begin with. Have a look at other tools like Notice as well, things that do all the work for you, because what you want to be doing is putting as much time as possible into writing, photographing, videoing, creating stuff, and as little time as possible into fiddling with the tech. There's nothing worse than coming home at 11 o'clock at night after a long day, maybe you've gone out with some friends, to find you've got to do something strange to the database. It's completely pointless. WordPress.com doesn't break, and it costs you, £25 a year. So keep tech straightforward. Well, you've got another tip.
Yeah, I think join in on some other people's sites and other platforms and Facebook groups and Twitter streams and all the rest of it to get a feel for what you might be letting yourself in for. Are you the sort of person that if you get home after the pub, as you've just suggested, and you find a load of comments about something you've written, how are you going to feel about that? Is that something you're quite happy to accept a bit of criticism or even out and out attack? It does happen. How are you going to respond online? Do you feel confident in the way you express yourself online that this is going to be an easy thing for you to cope with? And just sort of get a feel for the general area of it before you commit yourself too fully.
Yes, and I think there are different schools of thought on this, but I would always encourage people not to be too literal on issues of freedom of speech. This is sometimes controversial. It's your site, it's for your community, it's for you to manage that discussion. If you have a completely unregulated discussion where everything is allowed through, the well can very quickly become poisoned, and you see this in the newspaper discussion threads as well. So at the beginning, have the confidence to not moderate brutally and randomly, but to moderate against a very simple set of criteria. So if your website is about, making Midfordshire a better place to live, work and study in, and make sure that people understand the context of that and the type of conversation you want to have. And don't be afraid if people are harshly dissonant or abusive or just trying to pick fights, ask them to go somewhere else. There are plenty of places on the internet where people can go and pick fights and be harsh and dissonant about others. It doesn't have to be on your site. Although some people think then one would have a more freer flowing discussion, as for instance the Pits and Pots did in Stoke-on-Trent for many years, if you might have a lighter moderation policy. So you need to think about that at the outset. One other point I would say is don't let your ego get in the way. This should never be, the vanity projects never work. It always needs, unless you have a particularly brilliant satirist or have a unique viewpoint on your town, which if you're honest about things, probably don't. Just keep it open and about the community and level and balanced and at a peer level with others, and don't try and take it over for yourself.
Yeah, same goes for political campaigning, really. If you want to run a political campaign, join a political party. To gather any sort of trust from your local community, your political views are a bit of a side issue. You need to sort of park those and allow other people's views to come forward as well. And I think most of the hyperlocals that have any longevity manage this perfectly easily. It's a perfectly reasonable position to be in, to persuade people from both sides of the fence, as it were, to discuss the issues, to play, what's the saying, to play the game and not the...
Play the ball and not the man.
Yeah.
Play the ball and not the man.
So, that's something that if you haven't experienced it before, it's a new area for you, but one that will come up quite quickly. And when we're talking about politics, we're not necessarily talking about party politics. Obviously, local council decisions can be quite political at times as well.
The one other thing I suppose is don't be too serious. It's important to have a light touch, and whilst one can discuss deadly serious issues like the incinerator they want to build next to the school or something, at the same time a picture of an engaging pet, or a tree in bloom in the park, or a really lovely flower bed, or someone's window boxes, or the sky, or a sunset, images of nature, particularly in urban sites, soften enormously both the tone and feel of a site, so that it becomes a slightly more welcoming environment. And so don't be afraid to cover that sort of thing. People in urban landscapes love to share incongruous natural beauty. So if there are pictures of the natural world, they'll always try and bring them in and do things to lighten up a too serious a discussion. Nobody wants to eat all bran every day. It's don't be too worthy too much of the time.
Yeah, and if it was very worthy a lot of the time, it's not really a true reflection of the community around it, is there? There's a light and dark and fun in all communities. So all the sort of events that happen in your community, worth trying to include something. Perhaps the people that go to the event will take pictures while they're there, I'm sure they do, and tweet about it or whatever. Reflect that sort of activity on the site as well, so you get a true reflection of the sort of span of the community rather than just a fixed interest point.
And the crossover, which is implicit in that, into Facebook is really important too. Most people tend to start on a blogging platform because it's straightforward and easy to manage, and they have some control over it. But as we know, web audiences these days, they're all in Facebook. It's just where everybody is, and one can be as snobbish about that as you like, but it's not going to make any difference that all the audience is in Facebook. And so don't worry about that. Some people fret that they've originated lovely content on their blog, and that automatically posts into Facebook, for instance. They've created a Facebook asset for the blog. And then all the discussion happens in Facebook when people are sharing the post or liking it and chatting there, and there's nothing going on the blog, and the blog just becomes a source of content origination. Just don't worry about that. That's cool. People should be able to choose where they want to talk about things. Similarly, you might find them having a really lightweight discussion on Twitter, but that's okay. They're talking about it. It goes back to your objectives. Normally, objectives are about building a better community, and if people should be free to choose where they chat, as in the council, often in most towns, loves to convince itself that the only place to talk about public affairs is at a meeting where they have a set of tables and a PA system and a chair and agenda. And that's nonsense. The real discussion happens outside the school, in the pub, and in the playgrounds, and in the religious institutions, and so on. And the online media is the same. You can't hog it all in one place. Discussion takes place all over. You just have to go with that, observe where it's happening, and chip in.